Okay, cool. Welcome everyone. Sorry, a little bit of a late start there. Just setting up. So
I
yeah,
know we should be good at this by now, but it's coming on.
we're getting there. I've just had delivery of my new second screen, so hopefully it will be. I'm trying to manage all the different tabs on one computer screen. It's pushing my abilities of multitasking to a new level. So, but now hopefully I can manage it a bit better. So we're on to session 3 now of our isolation sessions. So this is basically racing prep. And just so you're aware, we will be recording this. So if you don't want to be included in the recording, you can send us all a chat. But hopefully in this recording, I'm not actually going to be recording everyone's faces, which is what I have been doing in the previous ones, which is why I'm going to be trying something new this week. And yes. So where were we? Racing prep. So basically, we're going to be covering things to think about as a team as you're trying to start, run a racing campaign or enter a regular kind of racing series with the same kind of crew. And that's about that. So I'm Rory D. That is my email. I'm London Corinthians offshore race captain. YMI dinghy stuff. Chief instructor of Equinox, and then we have Rob.
Hi, I'm Rob. Nice to see you all again on this sunny day. I'm a race skipper and coach, cruising instructor, and I have a Sigma 38, so apparently I know a little bit about them.
You'd hope so.
What's she called, Rob?
Kindred Spirit. Used to be on the racetrack all the time, but over the last couple of years, not so much. But we're back out there again now.
So I'm just moving myself closer to my router because I'm getting slight lag. If you do struggle to hear me, etc., please let me know, because although I've supposedly got all singing and dancing internet, it seems to be suitably unreliable. So our program of sessions, just so we're working through them, we've done 1 and 2 last week, 5 essentials and the rules on the water. This one's race prep, and then on Thursday we're gonna run through all the race crew positions. Then we'll go through starts, sail trimming, and tacking and jibing. And then we're starting a second series after these. We've got through the racing ones. We'll start a second series on skipper tips and refreshers. We're not going to try and run them both in parallel, I think. And then once these are finished, we're going to then go on to some more advanced racing stuff. Starting again running probably Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then we've recently got permission from the RYA to run the first ever actual online RYA courses, Day Skipper and Yachtmaster, starting next week, if anyone's interested. So racing prep, lots to think about with racing prep, but it's best easily broken down. Oh, actually, hang on. Okay, I'll do this one, and then Rob, you'll do the next slide. So things to think about is, firstly, you've got to get a crew together. You want to know what kind of conditions you're going out in. Is the boat, have you got the right sails for what you're going sailing in? And then, there's all sorts of things. What time does the race start? Where's the course? How long does it take to get there? What time do you need to leave the dock, etc.? Because there's nothing more frustrating than having half your crew ready to go and half of them stuck on the train or something, and then you're in a blind old rush and panic to get to the start line in time, which can make things a little stressful. So being organised is key. The rig setup, we'll go into this. Having a warm-up before the race is always good, especially if you've got crew who haven't sailed together before or don't know how, or are a bit rusty, or if anyone's new to the boat. Not having had a warm-up on the boat is going to probably set you up for a fail from the beginning. So it's always good to get out for some practice. Care for your sails. Love your sails. Treat your sails well and they'll look after you. And especially racing sails, they're generally bloody expensive, and you don't want to just, treat them like crap, basically. Debriefing at the end of all your stuff. We'll come on to the importance of that. Rob, I think this would be over to you.
Okay, so quite an important part of the boat, the crew. Building a crew is always a challenge as the boats get bigger. So you've got to have the right number of crew for the boat. Sometimes you can have some people mixing and matching, but if you set out in the morning and you've got nobody who's done the bow before, then obviously that's not an ideal position to be in, because it's difficult to train a bow person up in the hour you have before the start of the race. So it's absolutely crucial to get the right people. So we've got a list there. I know most people know, but we just put down for a sort of Sigma 38 J109. We've got the bow, the mast, and as Rory said earlier, we're going to go into more detail on Thursday about each specific position. But so bow, mast, pit, couple of trims, main sheet, helm, tactics, and nav. Often the tactics and nav can be combined, but these are your perfect positions on a boat that has 8 or 9 people, like a Sigma 38, for instance. So when you've got your crew, you can say, so you're going for the winter series, you can guarantee that everybody won't be able to do the same thing, do every single week. So it's really, really important to set yourself up a network of people. Encourage your other crew members to talk to people who might be keen, have done some sailing before. Yeah, steal some good people from other boats. No, I wouldn't recommend that at all. But if you're sailing well, people often tend to drift across. But have a really good network of people, and set up, a WhatsApp group or a Facebook group for your crew, so that you can keep in contact with them and build these roles up, because you'll never have enough people. I think I often look for 15 people, probably, maybe more. Some people will be disappointed, but some people are happy to dip in here and there, and make a really good list of those people right at the beginning who can do what weeks. Send out a spreadsheet. They're always good to have. Okay, so we'll go into more details on that as time goes on. Rory.
Weather and sail selection. So again, the fairly key before you head out to know what it is you're going out into. Keeps things under control and stops you getting into tricky situations. So you've got, ideally, as we go, if we just flip back to the last slide, hopefully. We've got navigation and tactics. So, normally the skipper of a boat tends to be within the helm, nav, tactics area of the boat. It doesn't have to be at all, but that tends to be how it works. But those kind of people who are managing the crew will be looking at the forecast plenty of time in advance. So you want to know what the weather is and how reliable it is by checking it at least starting a kind of week in advance, and then just keep tabs on it every time the forecast gets updated, just to see are we looking like spinnaker sailing, are we looking like storm sail sailing, that kind of thing. Hopefully the former. And then also we've got the course. What time is the course? When does the race start? How far away are we from the start line? What time do we need to get there? So what time do we need to leave the dock? What time does everyone need to get there by? So for example, we just done the Frostbite series, the Frostbites and the Hamble Winter series and things like that. They're racing on a Sunday morning, and so most of the time, the majority of the crew just come down on Sunday morning. You get there for 8 o'clock. You're off the dock by 8:30. You get half an hour's practice, and then you're on the first race is at 10 o'clock or something like that. That's the ideal situation. That is, of course, not quite how it works out, but that's how we'd like it to work out. And so on. So then we got the sails. Depending on what boat you're on, what class you're in, what sails you have on board is going to make. You can some classes you're allowed to change your sails. So I think like in the F40s, you can take the sails that you're not going to be using off the boat to save some weight. Whereas in like one design classes like the Sigma 38s, J109s, things like that, you must carry all the sails on the boat at the same time. So then it's just a case of making sure you've got the right ones ready. So if it's the wind's due to pick up all throughout the day, throughout the race, for example, you might start on the number 1 or 2 head sail and plan to be dropping to the number 3, and maybe also switching from the lightweight spinnaker to the heavyweight spinnaker. So you need to make sure that all of them are packed and ready to go. The batten tension is, yeah, so if you, again you might want to have a little bit more batten tension in. We can come on to a bit more of that. We're going to do a little bit more on sort of the sail trimming side of things later on, but adjusting that for the lighter or stronger winds. And yeah, and work out what are the class rules for your particular race organizer. Do they have some unique rules? Most of them tend to have something a bit niche going on, so you've got to pay attention to the rules of each race, because you don't want to end up overpowered and generally stressed, like I'd imagine these people are. Yeah, I think. Well, there we go. Anyone know what this maneuver here is called? It's quite an advanced maneuver. This is what they call a Chinese jibe. It's generally a totally crap situation to be in, although quite exciting, but that looks really windy. At least they're close to shore. You'd hope it helps nearby if it goes really pear-shaped. Okay, Rob. Right, everyone, hi there. So I've had a bit of an audio issue in the editing part of this video, being that Rob had loads of feedback, so I'm just going to have to basically repeat everything he says and go over it again. Hopefully I'll do as good a job. So anyway, so the rig setup is crucial to, sailing fast. You're talking about very small marginal gains, but if you're trying to be competitive, you can't have a dodgy rig, otherwise you ain't going to win anything. There's various aspects of it, but basically it is a bit of a black art, black magic, and it's pretty technical. But if you are going to start fiddling with it, there's a few key things really that you need to take into account to make sure you don't completely mess it up and need to get a professional in to come and reset your whole rig tuning for you, which can be expensive. So firstly you've got your forestay tension, which you can play with, and we can adjust this slightly on different types of boats as we're going. If the Sigma 38s, for example, have running backstays. So by tensioning up a running backstay, which is a fractional running backstay, by fractional I mean it basically the entire rig on a First 40 Sigma 38 J109 is a fractional rig, and by that I mean the forestay only goes about 7/10 of the way up the mast, or basically it isn't a masthead forestay, so anything from 9/10 and downwards is going to be a form of fractional, and so the running backstays also basically connect to here's our mast and our forestay. The running backstays attach at the same point of the mast as the top of the forestay, so as we tension up the running backstays, we're tensioning up the forestay. So if we're looking at adjusting our forestay tension for up, if we don't have running backstays, basically we're looking for light winds. We want to slacken off our rig tension so we can undo a few turns on our forestay to make it a bit saggier, to help the sails be saggier and looser and more just open, more powerful, so that it can take every little bit of wind. And then as it gets windier, we might tension it up a bit. It's key to add that somewhere here, always make notes. So you always want to make sure you know what you've started with, and it's always good to, when you buy a boat or get a boat, you should always get the manual for the book and for your boat, and it should tell you what your standard setting should be. So you always want to start and finish every day at these fixed dealing with your rig. You always want to be adjusting it from this sort of factory standard point, so that you know where you started. And so once you've come to the end of the day, you always want to return it to this point. So that means every time you put a turn or 8 turns of tension on, at the end of the day you want to take 8 turns of tension off. So 8 turns to the right, follow by the end of the day 8 turns to the left. Okay. If you've got an identical boat you can sail against, again, one design boats are great for this, then you can go and sail against each other. Put the same sails up, get roughly the same kind of crew thing going on, and sail the same points of sail. If one boat's drastically better than the other on a certain point of sail, then okay, our rig's not quite right, and that will help you tweak and improve yourselves. Okay, but always make notes what the wind strengths you're sailing in, What are the wind angles you're sailing, and what speeds are you seeing? And then so every time you tweak, you can compare. Oh well, actually we've actually made ourselves slower, for example. Okay, and again to remember to reset it each day. It's a very fine-tuning, tweaky thing. When I say forestay tension downwind, on the smaller boats, you see a lot of nutters in the highly competitive fleets. When you're going downwind, the forestay tension is being slackened off, and so you see people sometimes on the smaller end of the scale boats adjusting their forestay tension on the water. And again, it can be the same with the shrouds. The leeward shroud, when you're sailing upwind, is often not under any tension, so you can quickly adjust your tension there, but it's not recommended because it's pretty advanced stuff, and it's worth talking to an expert if you've got your own boat and you want to fiddle with your rig tuning. So here's a classic, measuring the distance that you've adjusted it by using some calipers, and here we've got the key point to work out. Is one of the simplest things to see is if your boat's performing better on one tack compared to another, have it sight up the mast. You can do it by eye like this, and that's very obvious to see that the right hand mast is not straight, which is going to be massively performing slightly better on one tack than the other. If you want to do it more accurately, you can take a halyard down from the top of the mast and just pull it down with a weight and just see what the mast is looking like as you sight down the straight halyard, which is kind of going with gravity. Okay. Our mast straight, always handy, and we've got all the crew, even better, and so time for a little warm-up. So if you can, ideally get out for a warm-up before your sail. Not always possible, depending on logistics, etc. But it means that you're just going to be a lot more prepared and a little less stressed, especially from the skipper's perspective or a navigator. Excuse me. Excuse me. Just helps you feel a bit more prepared and like you know what's going on. So if you can sail off the start line, you can just work out your wind angles for your first beat up to the windward mark. If you've got time to sail the course, that's always handy. And then you can also work out where do the shifts happen? Where's the wind not so great? Where do the gusts tend to come through, etc. Obviously, we're talking inshore racing. You're not exactly going to go and have a quick practice sail of the course leading up to the Fastnet race, for example, unless you've got plenty of time. But that would be a pointless exercise. So we've got the start line is the key. If you've got a navigator, if you're doing things in a competitive fashion, you've probably got the navigator and tactician will be discussing, right, what's the best end of the line to start at, where's the bias, what's the tide up to, and what's going to be the best way to get on the start line. And so you can then also plot the start line on your navigational software, whichever one you're using. There's many of them, if it's on your Garmin, etc., so that you don't need the assistance necessarily from the bow to tell you when you're over the start or not, because hopefully your software will do that for you anyway. I have to say I've very rarely used that. Most of the time it's just a case of making it up as you go along, but then at the same time I haven't regularly won races, so that might be why. Hydration. So here, obviously making sure everyone is, depending on how long your race is, but make sure your crew are looked after and make sure you've all had a good old drink of water, quick banana before you start racing, because you don't want people saying, can I get off the rail please and go and get some water? No, stay on the rail and make us go faster is your polite answer. Shifts, so I mentioned, working out where the shifts on the wind are. Jesus, sorry. Right. And just keeping focus.
All right, Rory.
Sorry?
You need to stand in.
It's all right. I think I'll have a little swig of water on the next one. Keeping everyone focused and just, again, if it's like little short, snappy races, kind of under an hour in length, then generally everyone can just go full game, focused the whole time. If you're going offshore, it's obviously a bit harder because you need to have some downtime. But if you've got little gaps in between short kind of round the cans races, then you should expect nothing but full focus from everyone at all times. I think that's about that really.
For that. Okay, yes. So loving your sales, as Rory alluded to earlier, they're quite important. They're also quite expensive. So we do need to look after our sales. And there's nothing worse than getting down in the morning. And certainly if you've got a new bow on board, who might be an experienced person and he's racing on your boat for the first time, and he goes to plumb in the sail, and it's just an absolute mess coming out of the bag. So we all know how happy bow people can be, and it's never their fault. And you will know about it. So, but it's really, really important that you've checked your sails out first. So after every race, make sure that you flate them, check them over for any, you might roll your mainsail, you might take it off the boom each time, but if you're going to flake it, just make sure it's properly flaked, make sure that, everything's eased off it, check it for any damage. Exactly the same for your headsails and obviously your spinnakers. Just you've got to check them every time and just not assume that they're all okay. Make sure if it's on a batten sail that your battens are checked. That you check that any damage or anything. They might have got really really wet. Dry them out. Give them a hose down. So. Really, really important. Repacking after every day and checking over. And loving your sails. Got to be really, really caring of them. Any owner will tell you that. And if they don't look after them, then they're mad. There's a nice photograph there at the bottom of one that's, if your bow turned up and looked at that, I know it's a big sail, but that'd make them grumpy if they were just about to plumb that in for a new upwind leg. So... yeah, I don't think there's a huge amount more to say on that particular one. Just make sure that you give them a good check over after every single race, and then you'll be in a good position for the next race.
So then finally, after any day on the water, always good to have a debrief, and debriefing skills aren't always the easiest. It's all very well and good to say, oh well, we completely balls that one up and that went well, very well done. That's not a debrief. That's just making statements. A debrief is a sort of team discussion. Ideally, everyone wants to be chipping in, and just saying from their opinion, okay, this is what I think I did. I did quite well, or I didn't do very well. Can someone help me? What could I have done to make this better, etc. And a debrief is not just a critical. You lot were rubbish. You could have done. Why didn't you do that? This, that, and the other. It's a constructive conversation about how to do it get better next time. And there's always the crew who, as soon as you got your lines tied up on the dock, they're running off for the pub. Try and hang around a little bit. This is why it's key to have beers on board, because that means that you can just keep everyone around long enough to have a debrief on the boat before you disappear off to the pub and then forget exactly what's happened on the day anyway. So it's the best way to learn. Most of the lessons I would say I've learned, it's either been in a debrief or in self-reflection of what could have been better about that. And you want to break it down into its different elements: the upwind leg, the downwind legs, the mark roundings, the start line. When you were off on your own, or when you were in close proximity to other boats, etc. Everyone's got their strengths and weaknesses. There's nothing. Anyone who says, "Oh, we did that perfectly," is basically bullshitting, because there's no way you can absolutely sail perfectly. There's always something you can be doing better. It's just a continuous stream of improvement with sailing, which is why it's so great. And good communication is key. This is one bit of feedback I will give everyone, because on the whole, everyone can always improve at this, is that basically when you're on the boat, talk lots. And I'm not saying about what you're going to have for dinner. I mean, it's just, if you're on the rail and you're the, on the upwind leg, you're the foredeck crew or whatever, and the pit crew, have a little chat about, what it is you're going to be doing and in what order and who's going to do what and how hard they're going to pull and how much by, etc. And just always be planning through the next manoeuvre. And so whoever's, the boat's boss, not necessarily the skipper, but the person who's running the operations, we'll always say, right, the next maneuver is going to be this, and then it's a case of, right, go, and everyone should plan, right, okay, so in this next maneuver, I'm going to be here, then, and so that when it comes to that maneuver, you've already you've done the maneuver in your heads beforehand, and that's going to help decrease things going wrong. So yeah, a good old debrief. This is actually not a debrief. This is a briefing from the Round the Islander race. I think it was basically a case of this is where we're going to turn left, and then there, and then there. But yeah, any questions on that so far? Oh, I'm not seeing anything. Cool. So yeah, that's us really. That's about that. How long do we go for there? Ooh, almost half hour. So yeah, hopefully at some point in the future we'll be able to get out and actually go racing.
Sorry, Rory. I was just going to pick up on your sort of communication point. I think that is absolutely key, and any communication on a race boat from the rail, calling in shifts possibly, but any pressure on the water gives that indication for the person trimming the main and the person on the helm that they might have to ease a little bit. And it's all about keeping the boat running in a straight line. So anything that's coming back like that, boat, there's a boat over there, have you seen the boat? Any bit of communication like that, useful information, is fantastic for the other people further back on the boat. You might not be able to see it because they're looking sort of leeward side rather than upwind side. So this is really what makes a race boat go really quickly, communication. So we can harp on about that, but it is absolutely key. Start line communication, visual communication off the bow, telling you how far off the line you are and all this sort of stuff, all just makes those little marginal gains that we spoke about earlier. Happy racing.
Any questions? Just to run through, there's our program of things. So yeah, so that's just what's coming up if anyone is interested in the future topics, etc. So yeah, so next session will be on crew positions. So we'll be running through a quick down low of all the different positions on board and who should be doing what and when. Then we'll run over some start lines, a bit of trimming, and then some manoeuvres, and then the actual start procedure itself. Okay, and then also we've got anyone interested in making the most of their isolation with a bit of theory as well. There's more to be done there, but otherwise, yeah, I think as we said, happy sailing.
That would be nice, wouldn't it, to be able to go sailing?